let's get straight into it. All right, so as always, you guys know we're going to start on the markets, the S&P and QQQ. So we talked about this last week. We're sitting right at this 50 weekly EMA, right? So I talked about this last week again. I said if we can hold the 50 weekly, we have a good chance to potentially bounce off this spot. Why? Because every single time we've held at this 50 weekly since starting this uptrend and breaking out of this downtrend, right, we've bounced. So that's going to be the level to hold this week as well, right? Nothing too special, nothing fancy. Just use that level to see if we can continue to hold. If we can hold, good chance to see 612, maybe make a big move back up to those highs. Now, QQQ is at the same spot, just like right under the weekly 8, right? So it's still setting up like right above, like right at it. It's just like closed a little bit below it, right? So that could still mean a very nice hold of the spot. We're just gonna have to see this week, right? Keep it very simple. We have a pretty kind of thin week from last week. So if we break the highs of last week, looking for a big move back to the moving averages at 500 on QQQ. If we break the lows, looking for a move back down to 467. You could see on the daily, we're super tight as well, right? So that's gonna be our key level, 486. And if I'm not mistaken, I think futures are gapping up a little bit. Yeah, so you guys can see we're setting up right at the spot. Now again, remember, futures are, we can move a bunch overnight. So if you're in longs, don't be too happy yet, but we'll see what ends up happening, right? If we can stay above this spot and, you know, the whole week just kind of get above that level there on QQQ, 485, stay above, we have a good chance to see this kind of breakdown level. So we can finally get a little bit of an oversold bounce. The last 3 or 4 weeks have literally just been nonstop downside. Every single pop has been getting sold, but a little bit of a change of character last week with a lot of stuff holding up. If you guys remember, we did have a few like red to green moves. Specifically the last 2 days, we opened red, ended up the day green. So that's pretty good kind of look for the markets if we can continue to do that. So that's the look there on QQQ. IWM also pretty strong. It looks like it wants to reverse. Needs to get back through the 21-day. The Dow held up as well pretty nicely, so that's a pretty good look on it. And on Bitcoin, it looks like we're starting to break out over this spot right here. So if we can stay above the spot and break out, could get a very nice move to the upside. Obviously not maybe all-time highs, but at least a bit of an oversold spot bounce to maybe this 90 spot. And so on from there. Now the VIX is going to be super important. We talked about this last week. If we broke under 21.5, we are going to get a little bit of a bounce in the markets. We broke under that 21.5. We got a little bit of a bounce off the lows. So far, obviously, we're not really pushing much, but we're holding up really well. So if the VIX continues to move lower, specifically under the week's low at $19, we could see the VIX come down to like $17, $15, and that could be a really nice move for the markets moving forward. So that's what I'm watching. And then ARK showed a ton of strength. So this is definitely something you want to look at, because ARK was super, super weak the last like 2-3 weeks, right? Specifically like Tesla, a lot of these growth stocks were very, very weak. But on the last 2 days, this actually ended up breaking the highs, getting above where Qs didn't get over the weekly high. So that's showing you that there's relative strength in ARK stocks, which means that a lot of these high momentum stocks could actually give us a very nice move to the upside for an oversold bounce, right? Again, remember what the trend of the overall market is, right? It has been to the downside. We're still below the moving averages, but there is a chance for an oversold bounce out of the spot just by looking at how the price action has been moving and all that good stuff. So that's what I'm looking at for the markets. In terms of my positions, I'm an MSTR long. So far overnight, again, this is just overnight. It could move the other direction in the morning, but it is up a pretty good amount. So for this one, I'm targeting 320. I'm targeting this 346 spot, and then potentially up into the highs here at 357 and maybe even 395 could be a really nice move to the upside. So this is probably one of the best looking setups in the market. The reason why, look at the weekly time frame, right? Absolutely beautiful flag on this weekly flag wedge. You have a ton of volume here as the stock moves up, low volume as it consolidates, and then again a ton of volume off the lows, which is telling me that the stock wants to start reversing to the upside. So looks really good. If it opens under 310, the 310 level is the level you're looking at for a break. So if it breaks over 310, could look for a move up to 320. Next one I'm in is Root. This is just some equity that I'm in. Looks really, really good. Probably going to continue to go higher. It's just been such a strong stock in the market. Now, my focus list going into the week. My first name is going to be Palantir. I really, really like this stock. Why? It retested on the weekly the previous breakout level, right? So this is the previous yearly high. You can see this is where the really big move started. Just came back down to retest, a ton of volume here on the hammer on the weekly. And since then, it's just been setting up in a super, super tight base, right? So the tighter the base, the bigger the move that could be made if it breaks out of this range. So if it stays over $91, gets through like 91.3, that's my trigger. And I'm looking for a quick move back to like 108, 127 could be a nice move up as well. And then Netflix is the next one that I like. This one is super, super strong. So again, we're focusing on strong stocks above the moving averages for longs. Why? Because we don't want to be trading stocks that are on the weaker side and below the moving averages, because there's going to be a ton of resistance. Let's say if QQQ pops, the stocks that are going to move the most are the ones that are above the moving averages already, because they don't have a ton of overhead resistance, right? All these moving averages and all these clusters here above price, all they do is act as more resistance. So whenever price is above the moving averages actually act as support. So every single time price moves up, if it pulls in, it will use the moving averages for buyers to get back in and continue to move price higher. Basically, it's literally just a trend, right? That's kind of what I'm describing. Trend, once you get below the moving averages, you trend down until you break the trend, right? And then same thing here. So you want to be trading within the trend, because it's going to be much easier for you to be able to move to the upside and get really good continuation on stuff. So that's the look there on Netflix and Palantir. AVGO is going to be my short idea. The reason why this one's to the short side is because it's below the moving averages, right? So the market is still not out of the clear. It could just easily, make new lows tomorrow. You want to be kind of prepped for both sides in the market. So if we get a big move down under 186, we're probably going to see a move back to 177. Again, the market is just in a potential oversold bounce position. This doesn't necessarily mean we're going to see all the way back to the highs just because things are bouncing or they're green. So again, remember what the trend is, right? For us to be able to reverse the trend, what has to happen first? Market has to get above the moving averages, pulls into the moving averages, uses the moving averages as support, pops out as a wedge pop, and then boom, you get a big move to the upside for a nice kind of pop out of that range. So that's the look that I'm looking at for this on QQQ. And we'll see if that ends up happening, right? If that happens, I'll update you guys. I'll let you know. And we'll continue to kind of watch and let this develop and play out. So that's the look there on QQQ. IWM, we already talked about a little bit, but small caps could make a pretty nice move higher. I think this is showing that, even with the rate decision, which was keeping, rates the same and seeing 2 rate cuts this year, it does look like IWM has a good chance to make a pretty decent recovery off the lows. But again, remember the trend, right? So just because we have a nice pop off the lows, something like this doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to move all the way back to the highs. It's just an oversold bounce. But the market is setting up for that type of bounce. So we can play that. And then once it's ready to continue to move lower, if that's where the market does want to go, that's something we could trade as well. So that's the look there. I'm looking at AVGO. If it breaks under these lows, could see 178. A few other stocks that look really good that I'm liking. SMCI. This one is in the chip sector. So if chips continue to hold up, there's actually a lot of chip stocks that I really like. SMCI, AMD. I think these could be really good for like oversold bounces. SMCI on the weekly looks pretty good, right? It's setting up like right at the 50 EMA. It already has a potential, this is actually technically a higher low, right? Here you could potentially be making another higher low. So it does look like it's starting to trend up. I do like SMCI, and it looks like it's setting up for that big move. It just needs to get back through like this 42, 43 level, and then it can kind of push and make new highs. NNE's another one that looks really good. If this one breaks over 107, it could easily see 115, 120, and then 125. This is a stock that's just been completely beaten down over the last few months, specifically over the last year, right? All the way from these highs. But it's at such a key spot right here, and there's so much downside that the stock went through. I could easily see an oversold bounce. So again, this doesn't mean that I'm saying the stocks can go all the way up to the highs, right? What I'm saying is you have an opportunity to play the probabilities, which to me look like a bounce is a little bit higher than continuation lower. So a bounce could just be a bounce and then continuation lower later on, but I'm looking for that quick pop out of that range. Same thing with Tesla, right? Tesla does look like it's finally starting to get a little bit oversold. You see a ton of volume off the lows, which usually does show some capitulation. Sellers that are late kind of get trapped. Price ends up booming the other way. So you get a nice kind of reversal idea. So that's the look there on Tesla. Really, really nice look on this one right here. Ton of volume on the right side of the base as well. So it looks really good. OKTA, another one that looks good. I got stopped out of this one last week, but it looks like it has a ton of continuation prospects to the upside. If it gets over 117, really nice setup. TM. So these are the types of setups I'm really, really liking, right? Even though this one's below the moving averages, it's very close to reclaiming, right? So the moment it reclaims and gets above, stocks like this can really pop out, right? So another one that is a really good example is HIMS. Look at this one. It's below the moving averages, but it's like right about to get through that spot, right? And it was moving lower on very low volume, had a huge volume pop on Friday. So these are the types of stocks that I'm looking at for a potential pop out of this range that can give us a nice move. Shopify is another one that looks good. Meta, right? A lot of these are kind of like consolidating really into the lows that look good for pops. So again, you might be seeing me going through a bunch of long setups. Remember what the trend of the market is, right? We're still downtrending, but there are a few really good long setups. There's also a few really good downside setups. Something like TSM to me still looks good for a short. Anything below the moving averages that's acting weaker is going to be, something that you want to focus to the downside. These are the stocks that are going to be weaker when the market does continue its trend to the downside. So that's what I'm looking for that on the downside look. Now, a few sectors I'm looking at. If you guys remember, Fang stocks have been getting absolutely destroyed, right? It's really has been only Fang stocks over the last 2 weeks that have been making like new lows. If you look at Apple, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they literally all have the same chart, right? It's basically straight down in this like pattern right here, all below the 8 moving average. However, look at the difference in the last week, right? What have some of these Fang stocks done? Well, you have a failed break of the low here. You have a ton of volume coming in off the lows. This is usually some pretty good indications of a change of character. Now, again, does not mean I'm saying we're going to move all the way up to the highs, but this is a change of character, which could lead to a nice trade to the upside. So what would we want to see on a stock like this? Well, it just needs to break the range, right? It's clearly just setting up in a tight range. If it can break the high, get back through the 8-day, you're looking for a nice oversold pop, maybe up to 202. 211. Those are going to be your targets, the moving averages, the declining moving averages to the downside. That's going to be what you're going to be looking at. Google's another one, right? You can see every single time it rejected the 8-day, made new lows. So if it can pop through the 8-day, it probably has a nice prospects for a nice move up. Same thing with Microsoft, right? Kept rejecting the 8-day. Now it's getting above with a ton of volume. Same thing with Microsoft. So these all look very similar. And Netflix, the moment that one got through the 8-day, look at what it did, right? Just completely gapped up. Came back down to the 8-day, they bought it up. Now it's setting up super tight. So that's why I really like this chart. And it's at a super key level. So it looks very, very good. Now, oil stocks still look very good as well. This is another sector I'm watching. XLE, CVX, Oxy. These are some really good setups that I think have a ton of potential for moves higher. Specifically CVX. This is one of my favorite oil stocks out there in the markets. Looks really good. So this is another sector I'll be paying attention to. A few other sectors that look pretty good, right? Blockchain stocks. So if crypto does get out of this kind of base right here, we're back above the 8, we're back above the 21-day. You can see we have a failed breakdown here on Bitcoin. If Bitcoin can kind of pop out of this wedge, move back to like 90K, crypto stocks look pretty decent, specifically MSTR and Coin. All the other ones have been a little bit on the weaker side and have been kind of distributing lower. But those two could be really, really nice in the future and moving forward. Bank stocks were also pretty strong. Goldman Sachs, JPM, USB, Wells Fargo. Really nice look. A few other sectors that caught my eye. Industrials were very weak on Friday. So continue to see if they sell off industrials. Why is this so important? Well, if you guys remember, we talked about this a ton. But when you sell off industrial stocks and stocks that are supposed to be safer in like choppier market conditions like cyclicals, any stock that's like in the consumer sector, for example, like McDonald's, all these type of stocks, they usually see perform best when the markets are weak. If these sell off, where do you guys think the money is going to go? It's going to go into tech stocks, right? So that's what we're looking for. If there's rotation into tech stocks, we're going to get a nice move and continuation in tech stocks for a nice bounce to the upside. If these stocks continue to get accumulated, that's where institutions are moving their money to. So that would be somewhere you'd want to be long. And also that would give you kind of an indication that tech stocks are going to be weaker. So this is why I watch industrial stocks. FedEx had a really big gap down. LMT got absolutely sold off as well. So a few of these industrial stocks move lower. If they continue to move lower, this is really good for tech stocks. Same thing with healthcare, right? We need to watch healthcare as well because healthcare was leading the markets higher when the markets were moving lower. If healthcare does turn and move the other way, what do you think is going to happen to tech stocks? Those are probably going to get some more flows now. So I'm always keeping an eye on these sectors to kind of see the distinction between them. A few other sectors that look interesting to me, SMH looks pretty good. Obviously, this one broke down out of a massive like stage 3 base here potentially, but on the weekly, it does look like it has a little bit of room to kind of bounce off this hammer here, right? Last time we bounced, look at the kind of candle that was put in. Huge candle off the lows. We had a very similar hammer that was printed there as well. So we could get a pretty nice reversal there off that spot to make a move to the upside on something like SMH and semiconductors. So those look pretty interesting. I like Intel, SMCI, AMD. Those are my favorite stocks. Even NVIDIA looks pretty good, but obviously needs a little bit more time to set up. But a few really good looking stocks in there. A few other ones I like, TTWO. This one is setting up in a huge weekly base. It looks like if it's going to break this high, it's going to get a nice push to the upside on a very, very big move. ZS looks very good as well. So there's a few software stocks that are setting up nicely as well. We'll see if China stocks want to strengthen back up. I'm still really bullish on BABA. It probably just needs a little bit more time to consolidate around this spot right here, kind of retest this level maybe and then move higher. But I think China stocks should continue to move higher. There was a lot of failed breakouts later in last week, but these still look pretty decent. Aerospace stocks look good, pretty good. I like ASTS and RKLB. These two are my favorite from aerospace. And then just growth stocks, right? This is where a lot of the bounce was made on Friday. We'll see if there's follow through. Look at something like Roku, right? It pulled in on very low volume, and that's pretty interesting, right? Very, very low volume. And then as it started to move back up, we were talking about this on the webinar, if you guys were able to make it to that. When volume is high on the right side of the base especially, that's usually a sign of institutions buying in, right? So super high volume on the right side, whereas the pullback was on low volume. That shows us something, right? Same thing with Shopify. Pretty low volume here as it pulled in. Obviously, there was a ton of volume near the lows, but as it pulled in, pretty low volume, and then again, high volume here as it starts to move out. That is something you need to take note of. So something like Shopify looks very good to me. A lot of these growth stocks look very interesting. We just need to see if there's follow through in the markets. If there's follow through, there's going to be a ton of great setups to trade. If there's not follow through, then we just look to see where the markets move from here. If they continue to break down, we continue to trade the trend, right? That's how you have to go about it in terms of looking at the market. So yeah, guys, that's pretty much going to recap my plan. I'm looking at Palantir, Netflix, AVGO. Those two are my three favorite ones. Palantir, Netflix to the upside, also MSTR to the upside. If that one does break 310, if the markets hold up and we get a nice pop out of this range, again, all you're looking for is these moving averages as your target. So let's say if we break over the 8 EMA, you're looking for the 21 EMA as your target. If you break over the 21 EMA, you're looking at the 50 EMA, right? And that's going to be really the big resistance spot where the market might see a lot of resistance for a move or continuation move to the downside. But I do think this week is playing out to be a nice bounce week for the markets. Again, just remember where you are in the markets. Always look at the daily time frame. See if a stock is above or below the moving averages. If it's below the moving averages, it's probably going to have a lot more resistance at the highs. So that's something to look at. If you guys have any charts you're interested in, anything you're looking at, I'll go over all that now so you can drop the charts in there. Carvana looks pretty good. This one does kind of look like it can test back into the moving averages, similar to Q's. If it breaks this high right here, we could see the 50 EMA tested on that one. Pretty nice move to the upside. Oh, also, by the way, I've been getting a few DMs. If you guys were looking to book the call and you didn't get a link to book in the webinar that I did for the bootcamp, if you guys are interested in that, I'm gonna just drop the link again, just to make sure. This is the link. So I think there's a few more spots, maybe like 5 or 10. So just make sure to click that to book a call if you're interested in the bootcamp, or if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll go over those. All right, so let's see. Yeah, Carvana looks really good. It could test those moving averages. Celsius, very, very strong. This one could potentially be starting to change its trend on the weekly. I would look for a break over this spot right here. If it can get through 34, you could easily see $50 and kind of have a nice pop up to those highs. So it looks pretty good. DE, Head and Shoulders. Yeah, it could be. If it breaks the 50-day, it's probably going to be a really nice move to the downside. So it looks pretty good. for a reversal. I don't love the volume patterns in terms of a short, because you can see it doesn't really have much like distribution volume patterns on it. If anything, it might be quite the opposite. So I would like to see a little bit more volume from the sell side, but it does look like a head and shoulders on it. SoFi, this one could be bouncing right off the 50 EMA here. You could see it retested the previous breakout level right here at the 50 EMA. Now it's coming back up, breaking through the spot right here, kind of pushing back into this level. So if it runs back to like 17, 18 through that spot, could be a really nice push on it. NNE and DraftKings. So NNE looks really, really good. I think if this one breaks 32, it's going to easily see 35, 40, and then maybe even $46. DraftKings, that one could kind of curl off the lows. It's bouncing right off this previous low right here. Volume patterns look good. So you can see it had a ton of volume as it moved up, lower volume as it pulled in. It needs to see a little bit more volume here on the right side. But if it gets through like the 21 day here, it could pop back to like 44. If it breaks the lows though, it's going to be a nice short to the downside. So you can kind of play this both ways depending on where it breaks. SU, not a bad look on this. I like oil stocks, so this could be a nice one. It's setting up right above this kind of like previous level right here. If it can get through like 38, it probably runs to 40, and then from there, that's going to be a really big breakout if it can break over $40. Palantir, we went over that one a few times, but it looks great. It looks like if it gets over like 90, it's going to see like 93, 95, maybe even 100. Really nice setup. Hood is another one that I like. So very similar look to, not necessarily exactly like Palantir, but I think that has a similar like kind of look to it in terms of the weekly. So you can see like it broke out here and then the weekly pulled in. So it looks really nice. A ton of volume here off the lows with the 50 weekly EMA. And the daily looks really solid. A ton of volume here on the right side of the base. So it looks like if it gets through the 50 and the 21 EMAs, specifically over $45, I think you can see 52 pretty quickly. So that's a nice look on it. CEG. To me, the CEG looks a little bit more like a bear flag. But if it gets over like 224, it could pop to like 223, 252. But it does have a little bit of a bear flag look to it. How come sometimes your support resistance levels go through mid candle and sometimes hit the high of low of day? It just depends on where the most touches are. So for example, the most ideal level for something like this would actually be this level right here versus the high, right? Because this is where the most touches are of this resistance. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 rejections versus just one rejection here. So you always want to use support and resistance for where the price is respected the most. Docu break over 88.58. Yes, looks very good. I like that stock a lot. The weekly looks insane. Back above the moving averages. Got a little bit of a wedge pop. So over 88.2, it could easily see 99. Check out Octa Bull Flag on daily. Was just going over that one. It looks amazing. IBM to the short side. Yes, if it breaks the inside day low under 238, could be a really nice short. It's below the 50 day. It has the gap to fill to the downside, so it looks really nice. TSM break under 173.55 looks really good on a break under that level. I like this one as well. It has a ton of volume as it moved lower, and then here no volume as it's moving up. So that's usually a pretty good indication for continuation lower. DLSK, I'm assuming you mean CLSK, but yeah, that one looks nice under 7.25. It might be a little bit extended to the downside, but it could continue to run. I would watch Bitcoin to see how Bitcoin's moving as well. What about MU? So MU had earnings and it gapped down on that, but it's still in this big weekly base. So if it can break out of the highs, we get a really nice move to the upside. But as long as it's in range, it might just kind of just continue to chop, right, until it's ready to break either the high or the low. So that's what I would look to trade it once it actually breaks the range. EXC, solid setup on this one. It broke out of this high right here. Now it's setting up right under these previous highs. Obviously rejected a little bit. Ton of volume on that triple witching Friday. But if it can like set up like this, with the ADMA coming up and then break out, I really like it for a break over. MRK to the downside. Yeah, that could work on this like rising wedge short. It's kind of hard to find a level to use on this one, maybe like 92, but if it can break like the moving averages, I think it could be a nice move to the downside for sure. HON. This is a pretty tight kind of downside PEG to me. So for something like this, I would be leaning a little bit more to the downside just based off the volume patterns. But it can go either way. It really just depends on the market, I guess. If the market breaks up, this can kind of push out of this 50-day. If the market moves lower, this could be a nice short under 208. How would you enter Palantir on a break over 91.3? IBIT. IBIT does look like a bear flag, but obviously Bitcoin looks pretty good. If it gets through the moving averages, it could easily kind of pop out of this wedge to the upside. And if it breaks the low at 47.25, if Bitcoin breaks down like under this bear flag look, then obviously it can kind of pop down lower. NVIDIA. NVIDIA is actually not too weak. It's actually interesting how, you know, this one has held up pretty well. It does have that death cross on the weekly that everyone's talking about, but it's still at the 50 weekly EMA, right? So even though it has the death cross and everything, it's still at the 50 weekly EMA. So as long as it holds the 50 weekly, it still could potentially bounce. It does need to get through like 123. If it can't get over that 123 spot, under this like 115, 114.5, it could be a nice short for a move to the downside. Affirm could be setting up for a nice pop back up. It's super oversold off the highs. If it can reclaim 50.6, 50, 51-ish, could easily see 59 and then 67 to the upside. OKLO. This one needs to get back through $30. It's a little bit oversold. Also, earnings coming up on tomorrow, so that's going to be obviously big to see. If it doesn't hold on earnings, it might just kind of, you know, nuke a little bit to the downside. But if it stays above and gets through $30, I think it can kind of pop back to near these highs if the market's set up. NIO. I really do like NEO. Obviously, I had earnings and reaction wasn't that good on it, so it might just need more time to consolidate base and kind of push through. I thought it was ready to move here with a ton of volume, but obviously it looks like the market wasn't ready for it to make that move. It needs to get back through 5.3. If it just stays like this for now, it looks like it's not going to really move much, so it needs to get through that level to really make any big move. LY setting up for a big move. Now it is now above trend line and volume picked up last week. To me, this actually looks a little bit more like a bear flag. Obviously, it depends on if it gets through the moving averages, but it had a ton of volume to the downside, and then it moved on higher volume to the upside, on lower volume to the upside, sorry, and then now a ton of volume here as it tried to kind of go red on Friday. So it could be a nice short under like 825, but if it breaks over the EMAs, 854, could see a nice pop back to 933. So pretty tight look on it. NOC. It has a pretty nice like pennant on it here. Pretty tight. If it can get through like 496, has a good kind of room back up to 510, 542, and then 554. Could be a nice spot for it. SBAC. Same kind of look on this one as NOC. Very similar kind of pennant on it. If it can break through 223, it can see 226 and then kind of move into those highs. ANET. This one's pretty weak. It's still below the moving averages. It did put in a potential higher low, so it might kind of want to start kind of pushing back up. But for these type of reversal trades, I usually like to look for like a wedge pop and then into the moving averages and then pop. So it might be a little bit too premature for it to the upside. HAL downside. Oh, I'm on the wrong one probably, right? Halliburton. Yes, that does look like a nice bear flag. And industrials do look pretty weak if the tech stocks do bounce. BUD, Bud Light. Super strong trend on this one. If it can stay above the 8 EMA and set up, it can pop through the highs over like 63 and then move up to 67. Tesla. I think Tesla's in for a continued short-term bounce. Specifically on the weekly, you could see it doesn't really have much resistance until the 50 weekly EMA, which is at like 290. So I could see it move back to like maybe 270, 290 on this one before any more downside. Do you scan for stocks on FinViz? Yes, I still use FinViz sometimes. Sometimes I use TradingView. Just depends on the scan that I'm doing. Roblox looks really good. The weekly on this one's amazing. It's setting up in a super tight weekly base right off the 50 EMA, tight daily wedge. Looks like it's going to pop to 64, 67. So really nice move to the upside on that one. Oxy. Out of all the oil names, I would be a little bit careful of Oxy because I think all the other ones are a little bit stronger. This one on the weekly, you could see is still below all the weekly moving averages, even though it is forming a little bit of like a wedge. Look at something like CVX, for example. It's already breaking out. It's already breaking out, so looks like it can make a really nice move to the upside. Holy shit, losing my voice. So yeah, looks really good though. On CVX, something like Oxy is gonna be a little bit weaker though. But if it can get through like back to the 50 day, over 48, I could easily see 52 and higher on that. UNH doesn't really have much of a setup, to be honest. It needs to get a little bit tighter, but if it stays above the 50, it could easily see like 544, 620. Did I look at Hood? Yeah, I looked at it. I like Hood. It's got a nice setup on it. TIGR, yeah, TIGR looks really good as well. It's got a tight kind of flag here right off the 8-day. If China stocks hold up, I think this is going to be a nice winner. AMGN, not a bad look on this. A ton of volume on Friday on the triple witching. If it can pop out of this like flag, I could easily see 335 again to the highs on it. TTWO, super solid. This is probably one of the best like charts in software. You could see institutions are clearly buying this. Do I like Futu break under 103? Could be, but I wouldn't really short China stocks in my opinion yet, because on the weekly it's in a huge weekly uptrend. So I don't know if I would love to short it, but I guess if it has some volume and it breaks down, it could work for like a scalp. LY weekly looks bullish, daily looks bearish. Yeah, the weekly does look good. App seems about to break a key level. Yeah, similar to the other charts that I was talking about. Specifically the ones that are like oversold off the highs that look like they're extended down. If this one could break like 310, it could easily see like 356 and then like 512 for a nice move up. ON. This is a pretty nice chart on this. Pretty nice chart. It needs to get through the moving averages though. It does look like it's a little bit extended to the downside, but if it can get through like the this trend line right here in the moving averages, looks really good. GE, actually pretty strong. Out of all the industrial stocks, it's holding up really well. I guess it's more like an aero defense name. But yeah, super strong, ton of volume on the off the 8-day here. It could set up for a move higher. I think the stock does want to go higher. Specifically on the weekly time frame, it looks really nice. TTD. Ooh, this is a weaker one. I don't know if I would. I mean, it's extended to the downside, but I would probably stay away from it. It might even be pretty hard to short just based off how much it already moved, but I guess that could be a bear flag. AIG. I really still like insurance stocks, so this looks good to me. It's got like a nice flag here. Maybe it needs to tighten up a little bit more, kind of like it did here, but super solid on it. Nike. Nike's still really weak in a big weekly downtrend. It might honestly move all the way to this low right here before really showing any strength and any signs of reversal. Saw my old video using TTM squeeze. You still use it? No, that was like super long ago, like maybe 2021. Just not necessary. I just analyze price, volume, keep it simple and repeatable. SMCI looks good. If it can break through 43, I think it pops back up to 67. Looks super solid. NOC, GE, AMGN, and VRSN. That's a lot of stocks, but we'll go through it. NOC we already went through. Really solid flag here. If it can break through that spot, you can see 508. I like that one. GE looks very good as well. If it pops through 207, you can see 211. Really nice chart. AMGN, another really nice chart. Went over that one as well. Looks like it can see 335. And then VRSN. Super strong. Wow, this thing's been in like a crazy uptrend. It is nearing some weekly resistance at the highs, but until like this high right here, probably continue to run. Super strong volume as it's moving higher, so super strong trend on it. MRK looks good to the downside. A ton of volume here as it's breaking down. I feel like this is one thing that's holding me back from becoming profitable. I always wait for the indices to get above, below certain levels and moving averages so that I can enter setups. But once that happens, my trigger level on my setups gets taken out and can't get a good entry. How can you enter with confirmation from the indices and still sticking to your trigger level for your entries? If that's really what you think is holding you back, just don't wait for the indices to confirm, right? Doesn't really matter what they're doing at the end of the day, as long as you're playing the trend of the market. Unless you're like day trading, like if you're day trading small moves, that's obviously going to matter a little bit more. But if you're looking to hold over like a, few days, shouldn't really matter much. Do you play gap fills? Curious because of your comments on UNH, which is moving up a gap. I don't really play gap fills much. Not really my style. I like to trade stocks that are like already trending. If it's trending into the gap fill, then I could trade it. BA, super strong. This one is coming off the lows, ton of volume. It had really good news. It's holding right off this really important trend line. So if it can break through the spot, it does have a chance for a pretty good move to the upside and continuation. Lucid. This one is a little bit on the weaker side, below the moving averages. If it can pop and get back through that spot, could see like $3. But it has been a little bit weaker, so I'd be careful with stocks that are like on the weaker side. NBIS. This one is also a little bit weaker. It's been downtrending here, below the moving averages. Didn't really make new highs while the market was holding up, so not really my favorite. If it breaks under like this low here at 24, it might even see lower. But if you're looking for this to start going back up, it needs to get back through like this trend line here, back to the moving averages, kind of pop through that spot. Uber looks great. I think this is going to run back to like 82. ADMA, pretty nice, not tight enough. I would like to see it like get a little bit more tighter for a trade, but nice uptrend on it. DB probably needs to get a little bit tighter as well for me. I think this might be a China. Oh no, it's a Europe stock. The European markets have been very strong though, so RR is great. This is probably one of the best looking stocks in the market right now. Super nice. Look at all the accumulation that's been going on this one. Even when it was pulling back lower here, funds weren't selling out, or I mean, maybe they sold here, but they're starting to reaccumulate. You can see it by the volume. Super nice chart. Google, very similar to all the other Fangs I mentioned. This one could pop back up out of this spot. If it breaks through that level, could easily see 174, 187, and then maybe 205, and kind of get a nice continuation higher. Meta, also kind of the same idea, right? If it needs to get back to the moving averages though, but a lot of these Fang stocks have been being down, so a move through that spot could be really, really nice for it to see a nice pop back up to the high. LMT for short, yes, I think that could be nice. It needs a little bit more consolidation though, because it did make already a big move. So I would look for it to maybe form some sort of like bear flag and then take it lower. But yeah, it does have a lot of volume to the downside. I went over NNE, but we could look at it again really quickly. It needs to get back through 32.2, and that's going to give it that big pop to the upside. If it gets through that spot, can really give us a nice move.